Hello, we're rolling into another episode of the DRH show. As usual, in each episode, I'll be talking to interesting people within psychology, mental health, and well-being. Today, I'm joined by a peer support worker with Oxford Health NHS Eating Disorder Service, and she is a patient representative at the Royal College of Psychiatrists. She's also a researcher. Dr. Lorna Collins, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Dennis.
It's great to have you here, Dr. Collins. Let's start off with you telling us your backstory, your trajectory in life, and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
My new life started when I was 18 years old, when I had a very severe traumatic brain injury by falling off a horse. And I was in a coma for some time and awoke with total amnesia. So I did not know who I was or who anyone was. And this brain injury developed into several psychiatric problems as I tried to express myself, tried to control my life in which I had no control. And I developed hallucinations, and I was self-harming, and I lost a lot of weight. And I was incarcerated in psychiatric institutions, in and out for nearly 20 years. This was a very dark, miserable, horrible time for me. And I had to think that my life was like a blank canvas after the brain injury. I couldn't remember anything. I just had the torment of my present. So with a blank canvas, I had to start again from nothing. And the only thing I knew in my life was torment and destruction. So it was really impossibly difficult. I didn't know what to do. And these experiences really shaped my current life. And I thought to myself, how on earth can I stay alive if I have such bad experiences, if I hate myself, if I have voices telling me to destroy myself? And this went on, and I actually found that where I could find relief was by engaging my creativity and by making art. So I began an artistic practice, and that was my medicine. That was put on my list of medications as a medicine when the doctors finally realized that I had found something that could actually help me. So then I discovered the link between the arts and mental health, and the arts and recovery. Gradually, I got better. I finally found a hospital which could really help me with all my complex symptoms, including the brain injury and all the symptoms that I had accrued along my journey. This was at Oxford, the Warneford Hospital. And I recovered, and I was discharged for the final time after about 30 admissions or more in January 2018. And since I was discharged from hospital the very last time, there will be no more hospitals, I made it my purpose to show other people how they could recover themselves by using the arts. And I became a campaigner and an advocate, as well as a writer and always an artist. And from then, I've really built my career on my recovery, really, because I want to show people that no matter how severe and enduring your eating disorder is, or any of your mental health problems are, it's still possible to recover. Here's how I recovered. This might help you too. Now, we're all different. Everyone has a unique story and unique problems in life, but we all have a capacity to learn and grow with compassion, hope, empathy, and sympathy. Those things really help people, all people. And the arts can also really help people, everyone. We all have a capacity to be creative and to heal ourselves, I believe. So now I am working for the same trust where I finally recovered, Oxford Health, as a peer support worker. Now, this means that I use my lived experience of distress, illness, treatment, and recovery to support patients in their own recovery journeys. I also won a new job recently, which is to be the patient representative at the Royal College of Psychiatrists Eating Disorder faculty. So I'm representing patients on a larger scale, really. And I also write articles for newspapers, and I'm writing a book. And recently I did a TED talk about my recovery.
And of course, this is really a remarkable story of recovery. And as you said, you're just trying to share your story, even though some people may not be able to relate because of the severity of their lived experience or severity of their traumatic experience. But what you're saying is that there's a possibility, there's a potential for art as a creative outlet to, help you with your journey towards recovery. And it's really an amazing story. And just like what you've mentioned, you've done a TED talk about this. I know we could watch this on YouTube, but if you could just give us a snapshot of what was the talk about, what was the core message of your talk?
Please watch it on YouTube.
Yeah,
please watch it. It's called How Creativity Revived Me. And in a nutshell, I show my story. I show how making art and being creative revived me from being practically dead and so destructive to hopeful and alive. And I show how that happens with me. And then I open a practical experiment to the people at home and say, well, let's be creative. Why not? Why not do it now? Let's do it now. Let's start clapping. Let's have a beat. Let's do a little movement. Let's get a piece of paper and have a scribble. I have various exercises that people can do. And you don't have to have art materials or paints. With my work, I go by the premise that no one has paints and no one knows how to draw. Doesn't matter. We still all have this innate ability to be creative and to revive ourselves.
That's I think that's really a wonderful message. And just like what you've said, I invite everyone to have a look at your TED talk, and hopefully they could have a better they could better capture your message. Now I just want to pick on what you said, that some people, they think that they don't have the innate ability to be creative. And I've met a lot of people. I'm quite artistic myself. I go to drawing classes myself. So we're kind of, from the same position.
Yeah.
It really resonates what you're trying to say, arts really allows us to make sense of our experiences, especially during this COVID-19, drawing really helps me a lot. But for those people who think that, art is not for me, I'm not really an artistic person, I've never done this before. So how would you encourage them that, it's not really impossible for you to be artistic? What
is art? How do you define art, Dennis?
That's a good question.
I'm not supposed to be asking the question.
Yeah, but I love this. Well, for me, art is something, that you allow yourself to be expressive.
Yes.
It allows you to pour out your emotion. It sounds really vague and a bit cheesy, but for me, as because I draw, I don't really want to draw something which is an exact replication of what I see, but it's more of an expression of my emotion. That's what art is.
Absolutely. We're in the same camp, Dennis. We're in the same camp. Basically, art is an expansive phenomenon. It is a means of expression, and that means can take whichever medium you wish. It can be drawing a picture, it can be doing some gardening, it can be doing some cooking, it can be having some movement, some stretching. It can be any way you can find to express how you're feeling. It doesn't have to look like anything. I'm not very good at drawing myself, so maybe you should give me some lessons, Dennis.
I have a friend who runs a drawing class in Cambridge, and I've learned a few tips from him. I'll give his contact details.
Yes, thank you. I'd quite like to draw better, but why do I say that? Yeah. I say that because I'm socially conditioned to think that I need to be better at drawing, to enjoy drawing. I need to be better at something. I need to improve. Now, that's the antithesis of art, because the great thing about art, in my perspective, is that it's not about judgment. It's the antithesis of judgment. It's about expression and release. Because when I make art, however I make art, usually with my fingers. I just get really messy with paint and just put paint everywhere, and it looks extraordinary. I have this free sense of liberty in my head. There are no thoughts, and I just create. And that is so precious. And that, for me, that's the essence of art, that space where you can concentrate, you feel at one with the materials you're using, and you are free from the troubles of life.
And of course, Dr. Collins, you're not just an artist, you're not just a mental health advocate, but you're also a researcher. You've done a number of research about creativity and mental health. So if you could just talk us through about those work.
When I got to the age of, I can't remember, I was quite old, but at some point in my journey, I realised, having been in a hospital bed, that if I wanted to make a life for myself, I needed to have an education. I had to do my A-levels late after my head injury. I don't know what I got, can't remember. But anyway, I had no degree. I realised if I needed to make a life for myself, I had to go to university. So I went to Greenwich University because I wanted to do a master's. So I did a master's and an undergraduate in a year. And they said, you need to go to Cambridge or Oxford for some reason. I was so ridiculous. How else can I go somewhere like that? Anyway, I applied to Cambridge and I got an interview. And I just dazzled them with my extraordinary story. They were completely dazzled by my story. I said, I've got a theory about schizoanalysis in French philosophy from the angle of a traumatic brain injured, me. And they're like, whoa, never heard that before. And then they gave me a test in French, and I failed the test because I couldn't speak French or read French. But they accepted me. So I went to Cambridge, which was a hell of a shock to the system. And there I discovered French philosophy, which helped me make sense of the things in my head. And I realised it was art and creativity. Once again, this is the root of my current passion. At Cambridge, I tried to understand how art helped me make sense of the world and myself. And I started discovering these things in my MPhil, and then I did a PhD at Cambridge, where I was a scholar somehow. And my piece was called Making Sense. And it's how art can help us make sense of ourselves and the world. And this was a juxtaposition of post-structuralist philosophy, psychoanalysis, and phenomenology. That sounds quite complicated.
It does.
My novel point was that in the field of French philosophy, you utilize the practical personal experience of making an artwork as a methodology of analysis. So basically I made an artwork, and then I would analyze what had happened during that experience for me, how making an artwork helped me in my journey through life, how the artwork helped me make sense of myself and the world. I'd analyse that and write about that in very long-winded theoretical jargon, which is nonsense. But it's not nonsense though, because the words are nonsense. But the process of understanding and doing that research was crucial and vital for me. And that was I did that. I was graduated in 2012. I was very, very poorly at the time. I spent 6 months in hospital during my PhD and still managed to finish it in 2.5 years somehow. And I was in hospital 2 or 3 times during my PhD. Basically, I managed to do a lot of things between my head injury and now, but I was in hospital most of the time. And my thesis about making sense depended upon me recovering, because my thesis was that art can help us. And if I kept relapsing, my thesis had failed, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. It took me a long time, because then 2012 I graduated and I was still extremely poorly. extremely poorly. I was in a wheelchair going down for my graduation, you know. But then more years of being unwell, but then eventually I've now proven my thesis.
It's really like what I've said earlier, it's really a remarkable story. You know, you were not expecting to be to excel in academia, but you've done your research and you've proven that you can actually go to one of the top universities in the country, in the world even. And it's really amazing. And you've been there on scholarship, and since then you've done a lot of work in research, and you've also been a peer support worker with Oxford Health NHS. Now, you've already, because how I met, for those who are watching, how we've met is through Mental Health Blog Awards. So for those who haven't heard about Mental Health Blog Awards, if you could just tell us how you got acquainted with them. And of course, you've also done a talk with them. You've spoken to them about your journey. So if you could just tell us what was about Mental Health Blog Awards.
Well, last year I was working with Bucks Mind and Time to Change, which is an organisation that works with service users and people who have mental health difficulties to empower them and create a situation whereby there's less stigma and discrimination. And Mike from the Mental Health Blog Awards sent me an email saying, can we run the Mental Health Blog Awards with you in Oxford? And then we had a conversation, and then I said, no, I'm leaving Bucks Mind, but let's keep in touch. And then so he then invited me to go and give a workshop at Mental Health Blog Awards, which is where I met you, Dennis. Because Dennis won an award, which is very
Thank you.
Yeah, so proud of that. Well done. I did a workshop, which was, I had already filmed it, so that I had quite a relaxing day on the Blog Awards because it was already filmed. I did some creative workshops with participants. We did making mandalas. Mandalas are those sacred circles, expressing ourselves in a mandala. Also haiku poetry. We did 3 lines of poetry and a bit of yoga as well. So lots of quite fun, really. It was fun, wasn't it? It was like quite light-hearted. Not everything in life is serious.
I don't even know if Mike Douglas is watching this, I don't even know if it's uploaded on YouTube, because it's really good if people could watch lecture, your workshop, especially about that mandala. I personally enjoyed that. Now, I'd just like to step back. You mentioned earlier about your role with Oxford NHS, and of course, you've also now a patient representative at Royal College of Psychiatrists. So what does that role involve?
My role with Oxford Health involves supporting patients during their recovery journeys. I work with the treatment model and the system of care at Oxford Health, which is called CBTE. It's a version of CBTE, so cognitive behavioural therapy, but for eating disorders. So it's a model of care in which patients create a formulation. A formulation is a series of documents that create a map of patients' histories in their illnesses and their current symptoms, and then they create skills and strategies with which they can create a recovery identity. So sounds really complicated, but I help patients create their formulation and create a new sense of self which they can consider without having an eating disorder. So for someone who for me, I had an eating disorder for many years, and thinking of a new me outside of my eating disorder was impossible. Firstly, for a long time, I didn't think I had an eating disorder. I thought I was just a bad person. But during my recovery, I made a new recovery identity, which I worked with a metaphor and an image, the butterfly. The butterfly was my symbol of hope. And I still use my butterfly symbol, how would the butterfly react to this situation? What would the butterfly say? So with the patients, I talk to them about their own recoveries, and I give them support and help them plan their stages towards discharge and in their lives in the community. I also work with staff members and help to train staff so that they can support patients more effectively, and also listen to staff when when they have difficult times with patients. Everyone has difficult times in life, you know. We all need help. For the Royal College of Psychiatrists, I've literally only just started this role. So my role will be commenting. I've already been asked to do a comment for an article, and also being a champion of recovery. I need to be a role model. I need to advocate good health. I need to show people that it's possible to get better, to instill hope in the nation. Because I want to uplift the nation, really, because there's so much bad news out there every day. Twitter is saturated with bad news, and particularly about eating disorders. I mean, in my history, I knew 7 patients die at one unit. 7. And that's unthinkable, despicable, terrible. I want to make a future without eating disorders, ultimately.
I just like what I just like to pick up on what you said about, you know, social media is really bad, and I think it makes it even worse for people who are suffering with mental health issues, because they have to deal with with what's happening with politics, and then with what's happening with economics, and then on top of that, they also have to deal with their own mental health issues. So it really makes it worse for them. And so for people such as yourself, you know, who are championing mental health issues, eating disorders, your role is really important. And I think that's why the Royal College of Psychiatrists, you know, invite you to support them with what they're doing. Now, Lorna, I just want to ask again something about the arts. Of course, you are an artist yourself, but would you consider yourself as an art critic? And I don't mean it in a professional way.
In a professional way, I worked as an art critic for about 6 or 7 years. I did a column in a paper in London. So I would literally go to all the galleries with my notepad, and talk to curators and artists and other critics, and write 500-word articles that went in the paper. I loved it. It was awesome. That's what one moment in my life I would literally go to the private views and the gallery, go to the Tate and be first there with my notepad and get the press pack and be first to ask the curator a question, because I was very competitive with myself. And I love art. Art is my passion, and I wish I could go to the galleries more. I mean, that's one thing I haven't been able to do recently, partly because now I live in the middle of nowhere and there are no galleries around here. But at one point in my life, I lived in London, and I would be going to galleries 2 or 3 times a week and writing up newspapers. So that's when I say art critic, only because I was by profession an art critic, and I'm a member of the International Association of Art Critics. So with one hat on, one of my hats is an art critic.
Of course, Lorna, another hat that you're wearing is that you're also a blogger. So what can you tell us what you usually write on your blog?
On my blog, I don't, in honesty, update it enough, but I often put pages on my website. And so my website is a collection of a plethora of random pages about be creative, my imagination, Marxism, my portfolio, all my publications and my writings, and my poetry. So if you go on my website, which is lornacollins.com, it's very useful if you need to do some time wasting, but also inspiration. Who knows?
It's not a waste of time. It's, you know, something, you know, for people to look for. Stories such as yourself. You have a remarkable story that can inspire people. Now, I just want to touch upon what you said earlier, that Lorna is a Marxist, and it's actually on your website. So what exactly is, you know, Lorna is a Marxist?
Well, Lorna is a Marxist. Well, when on one stage of my life, I was an active Marxist, and I would go to meetings, which were quite intimidating. But for me, it's more of a philosophical stance, because in my reading, I won't bore you, but I studied Hegel, who was sort of the start of Marxism, because Marx reacted to Hegel a long time ago. Hegel wrote a long time ago. And then Adorno was a German writer around the Second World War who wrote Negative Dialectics. And I was flummoxed and fascinated by that book. I went through a period in my life where I would literally just read. I would read walking down the street. I was that obsessed with reading, literally. So I would go with a book everywhere, and I wasn't looking at the road. I was looking at my book, reading. So I was absolutely gripped by Adorno, who reversed Hegel's dialectic logic, but also made it something really interesting for people who don't fit inside the system. Because I've never fitted inside a system. I've always been a bit of a misfit, I guess is the word. And for me, Theodore Adorno's work, Negative Dialectics, spoke for me, because it was about what happens when you don't fit inside a system, what happens to the things that get left out. And then Marx, I was really reacting to Marx because I thought his ideas were really interesting, but deeply flawed. And I'm not going to go into that right now, but you'll just have to think about that. Do you think Marx's ideas work for the future? Maybe they do, but I think they need editing. So anyway, I won't go on because it's boring, but I love ideas. I love thinking about really big ideas. Like, for example, I just wrote a book review about prisoners. A book about prisoners and a book about theatre in prisons. And I was starting to think about morality in incarceration. What is the morality of a prison? What does it mean to put someone behind bars with nothing to help them change what made them do what led them to be behind the bars? And then if you do change someone's mind, change someone fundamentally, so they're a different person, what gives you the right to do that? I could go on. Sorry, boring you now.
No, you're not boring me. So these are the things that you I presume that you also write in your blog, not just arts. Okay, so for anyone who wants to delve more into Marxism and your idea about arts and creativity, they could visit your blog. And speaking about art, I understand that it's not only art that helped you overcome your anorexia, but also your dog. So please tell us about.
Wait a second. Foxy, the therapy dog.
Foxy.
I'm just going to get her.
Sure.
This is Foxy. She's a bit sleepy.
Hi, Foxy.
Yes. She's tired. 4 years ago, I rescued a dog from the local dogs home, and she came from Romania. She came all the way from Romania, from the streets of Romania. And I saw a white dog in a field in the distance, and I said, "That is my dog, and she's called Foxy," and that's who she is. And she's my best friend. We have lovely chats. We go out running occasionally. I was taking her to mental health hospitals before lockdown. And she loves people. She loves children. And for me, animals are so important because they are very forgiving. They're always the same. They're dependable, reliable, and great company.
Brilliant. So I'd like to move on to your eating disorders. And of course, eating disorders, these are very dangerous mental health issues. So you're a representative, you're a spokesperson for those who are suffering with those. So what sort of advice do you usually give to people who are struggling with it, and also for their family and friends, how they should navigate this experience?
Eating disorders are the most dangerous of all psychiatric disorders. So anyone who has worries about food or their weight or their body needs to speak about it if they can. I think it's really difficult for if you're isolated and alone with your problems. What I would say is that if you can get a notepad and start writing, a journal can be a friend, and then you can take your journal to show someone. I'd suggest if you have any worries or problems with food, I go and see your GP, because GPs have a lot of power. they can refer and find specialist help. So if you are worried about food and you're worried about your weight or your body, I would go and see your GP and talk to them in the first instance. If you can't do that immediately, I would write a diary, draw pictures, write down your thoughts. If you don't know where to start, just put your pen on a piece of paper and say, today I feel what? This happened to me today. This makes me feel what? And I find writing very therapeutic. And show it to someone. Might be your parents, might be your friend, and it can be your GP. With parents, I would say listen to your children or your friends, whoever you're worried about. Listening is the most important thing. Also, you can't solve it. Don't try and fix it. You know what I mean is, like, if someone said to me when I was unwell, oh, you've got to do this because it'll make you better, you know, or we've got to fix this, and they put it in their head that they've got to fix their daughter's or son's problems. That can be really off-putting and alarming. So don't try to fix it, but be there with compassion, hope, and support. Be a constant presence, that you're always there for the person whenever they need you. And that will, even if you don't say anything, just a constant presence to listen. Listening is absolutely crucial. I would say try not to watch all the television programs that are coming on air at the moment about dieting and lockdown and things. That's a really, really important thing, is don't watch those programs.
And instead watch something that would really inspire you, especially in stories of recovery, people who have lived experience about, recovering from disorders.
Mia, what's it called? There's a
Mia.
Who is it? What's she called? Recovery with Mia or something. I'll maybe we could put it in a link underneath the website, the YouTube channel. I'll give you the link to it. There's one or two people in recovery who have really strong accounts.
So Dr. Collins, you've done a lot of work with eating disorders, raising awareness about mental health issues. So what's the most important thing you want the public to know about your work?
I want people to know that recovery is possible. There is always hope. And creativity can nourish you. It can nourish everyone.
That's a brilliant message. And can you tell us some of the misconceptions about mental health and creativity that you've come across, and I suppose sort of address those misconceptions?
Lots of people think that eating disorders only happen to white, middle-class, teenage girls. Everyone can have an eating disorder. Men have eating disorders. People from LGBTQ plus backgrounds, black and minority ethnic backgrounds, all sorts of backgrounds. It doesn't matter where you come from, you can still have an eating disorder, and you still deserve help, and you still have the right for recovery. Recovery is still possible. With the arts, people think, oh, she can't draw. She's not very good at art. That's not what art is. That's a very narrow misunderstanding of art, to say you can't draw. You're not very good at drawing. That's not what art is. Art is an expression. That's it. I would say it is possible to recover. Some people say it's not possible to recover from an eating disorder. I never used to think it was possible. It is possible.
And also, how do you relax? What's your distressing outlet aside from making art?
I watch the television, not very often, but a bit. I watch Holby City and Casualty, which is not really relaxing because it's a hospital. I read books. I read trashy novels, and I do my drawing and painting as well.
Brilliant. And also, Dr. Collins, for those who want to also do a TED Talk, what would be your advice?
Keep a looking out on the on Twitter or social media for adverts. I've been looking for adverts for TED Talks for a long time. It's always been my dream. So I found, you just go online and put TED Talk. The TED Talk, TEDx Talk website has a list of all the TEDx talks, and you click on every single one and see when their call for participants is. So just go on the website and keep looking, keep scrolling. You'll find it.
And also, what do you think you would be doing if you didn't work as a representative, as a patient representative, as an artist? What do you think you would be doing?
Well, I have a 5-year plan, and I'm not letting anything sway me off course. So I can tell you my 5-year plan, but I can't tell you what I would be doing if I wasn't on my 5-year plan. Is that a bit rigid?
Tell us about your 5-year plan.
I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't doing this, but I have something else happening, which is slightly different, but bringing together everything. Which is, I have applied to be a research fellow with at UCL and with Oxford Health. So I would be working clinically in the hospitals that I'm working in now. And the proposal is called the butterfly effect: art, creativity, and eating disorders. So I would be working with patients and experimenting with them with ideas and practices to do with the arts, to understand how and why art can help people who have eating disorders. And I have submitted a proposal for this project. It's a very expensive project. So who knows if I'm going to win funding, but I will keep applying until I win funding. And I have very good supporters on side. That's my plan. But I haven't got confirmation yet, so I can't get too excited.
Yeah, let us know how you get on about it. Put it on your website. I'm sure people would to hear any updates about that. And is there anything else in the pipeline? Any upcoming book or webinars?
I've got several articles coming out shortly. Watch this space. If you follow me on Twitter at Sensing Lorna, you can keep up to date.
Sure. And of course, I take this as an opportunity to invite you to write for Psychiatrists. We'd love to publish a story about, recovery and eating disorders.
One more thing. One more thing. So I've just written a book about my story, and it's very elaborate. I don't know what the word is. It's very creative and extraordinary. And I'm looking for a publisher. So if you know a publisher who wants to publish an extraordinary, creative narrative nonfiction, I would love to hear from you.
Sure. Well, we can talk about that. Well, it's been an insightful conversation with you, Dr. Collins, but unfortunately our time is up. I look forward to hearing more about your work, and thank you for taking your time and expertise, for sharing your time and expertise. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thanks so much, Dennis.
Thank you.